Hi, everybody. Craig Wessels here from a Yank on the Footy, and this is actually the second time that I'm recording this short look back at round four. I attempted to do this earlier this evening while I was out for a walk through a nature preserve about a mile from my house. And well, we are still dealing with very cold temperatures. Eh, I guess not necessarily cold per se, but we were down to about 5 degrees Celsius with about right now it's 3 Celsius, and we have winds around 35 to 40 kilometers per hour right now. So, and it's coming right out of the north. So the weather was not very cooperative, and I liked my little rants that I had while I was out on this walk. But the bottom line is, I came back and I listened to what I recorded, and there was way too much wind that was being picked up, and I just did not like the sound of it. So I'm going to go ahead and spend the next 10 minutes or so recapping what I discussed while I was out there freezing my butt off, quite frankly. Which actually, in the great grand scheme of things, when we're down here, we get down to, minus 20 Celsius in the wintertime, and I'm still out walking. I'm not trying to record anything at the time. It's really not that bad without the wind. But wanted to talk about a couple of the games, and of course, the first one we have to talk about is the Gold Coast and Adelaide game. And myself and many other people said that this was the game of the round before the game was played, and it did not disappoint for impartial viewers like us who may not be an Adelaide or a Gold Coast supporter. But if you're an Adelaide supporter, it did disappoint because yet again, the comp has admitted that one of the umpires got the call wrong. Now, here's my question, okay? And I did not record this earlier today while I was out for my walk, and it just popped into my head. Um, Only thing popping into my head while I was out for my walk today was the rain that was hitting me out there. But I think we're unfortunate for this purpose. We're unfortunately in this position. But footy is such a fast-paced, free-flowing game that it does not have the luxury, I don't think, and I don't know how you would do this, to do something like the NFL does now that the NBA is doing, that Major League Baseball here in the United States is doing, with regards to instant replay and allowing the coaches to challenge a call. I just, and it just, like I said, it popped into my head. This is just a bad idea that I'm discussing. I don't think there's any way that the league would have the ability to have the coaches challenge a bad call on the ground during the course of a game. And I guess we just have to live with the bad calls. Um, it seems to be happening a lot with Adelaide as of late. There have been several that have occurred. And again, they got the long end of a short stick. Would Isaac Rankin have made that kick from that severe of an angle? Maybe. But keep in mind, all he needed to do was put it between the two outer sticks, and that club got 2 points. If he put it between the inside of the two big ones, they got four. But if he put it inside the outer two, they got 2 points. So he didn't even get a chance to try to tie up the game. So and again, it has to be difficult to umpire footy when it's being done at the pace that it's being played at in the AFL. I'm not bothering to look up the name of the umpires that were nearby that did not make the correct call, but I hate to see the officials or the umpires being the ultimate deciders of who's winning and losing. And then, quite frankly, that's what happened in this game. Or winning and playing to a scores level and having a draw, which I think Worst case scenario, Adelaide would have been ecstatic to get out of there with 2 points and a draw. Um, but I can't take anything away from what Gold Coast did at home. They're playing with swagger in a way. And let's be honest, a little too much of it, right, Mac Andrews? Which we're going to talk about in a moment. But this is a club that is starting to believe in itself. They're coming into their own. They're maturing. Um, you know, there are a lot of other clubs in the competition that would say, "Sure, you want to trade midfields? We'll take yours, Gold Coast. We take ours. We'll take yours. No questions asked." It's a phenomenal group of young players. Whether they're going to be able to hold them all together or not is certainly another story. I hope they, for the sake of the game, I hope they can. And I know that there are players that are, being hinted at as far as coming and playing for Team X or Team Y. And of course, my club was always attracting talent in some fashion or another. And sure, I'd love to win premierships and that sort of thing. But do we want it to become a situation where it's kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals, where the Washington Generals are there basically just to be cannon fodder, if you will, for the Globetrotters to go out and win their games. Okay. Um, Again, it's one of those things that I love about footy, that I appreciate about the NFL, to an extent the NBA, is the salary cap. Because, yeah, and if you've not checked out the previous episodes, and I had a blog post about this very recently, this is the reason why I am a footy fan, and it's mainly because of Major League Baseball's lack of a salary cap and basically turning the game into an extraordinarily uneven playing field, if you will, amongst other things. But the fact that you have teams that have salaries that are higher than, you know like 6 or 8 or 10 teams combined is ridiculous. And that's, to me, that's not sustainable. And I worry about college athletics here in the United States with all of the name, image, and likeness money, the NIL money that's going around here. I worry about that being something that becomes unsustainable as well. And I'm a party to this because the local team that I support, and I didn't go to school there. I enjoy watching them play because they tend to be successful and they win a lot. The Ohio State Buckeyes, spent a shit ton of money basically buying players, college students, being paid in many cases more than professional athletes are being paid. In many cases, being paid more than footy players are being paid at the highest level. So I, it's again one of the things that I appreciate about footy. But just the whole thing about the whether or not there could be an instant replay thing, I don't think it would work. But it would just certainly be nice if the officials were not the ones that ended up costing clubs games, that sort of thing. And I want to get to Mac Andrews. I mentioned that already. I'm ecstatic that I managed to add Riley Tilthorpe to my fantasy team this year in the 17th round. Okay. And I was looking for another key forward as kind of a reserve. I had already taken Tom Lynch, who I actually just dropped from my team tonight and replaced him with Jade Gresham. I just don't think Tom Lynch is going to do much this year. And I wonder, and I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit. I wonder, would Richmond be better served by playing youngsters at that key forward position? Would they be better served just saying, Tom, you helped us win a premiership. We're going to go ahead and have you go down and play some VFL games and work alongside some of these other youngsters to help them ply their craft. You're going to kind of be a coach on the field. He's not going to like to do that, but you know what? He's still getting paid. I believe he's a free agent at the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's off contract. And I was wondering, and I'm going to get back to the Suns and um, Adelaide here in a moment, but since I'm on to him already, since I was talking about Thilthorpe there, um, when McKelty Lafau comes back from his knee injury, and yeah, he's size wise, he's comparable in size too. He's a large young man, 6 or 7 years younger than Tom Lynch is. Does the club go ahead? Yeah, and he was dynamic when he played last year. He was a hell of a lot of fun to watch play, I was glued to the screen when he was playing because just seeing somebody come in from having played rugby as extensively as he did made it an awful lot of fun. Um, so I wondered, do they plug him in there, or is there somebody else that Richmond could plug into that tall forward spot there? Um, in the to allow in the to allow the club to blood some of these players to get them ready for 2026 and 2027. Because let's be honest, Tomlich is 32 years old right now. He's not going to be part of this club probably the next time they play finals. I don't think it's going to be this year, although they've been very competitive this year, and I tip my cap to them. But getting back to Adelaide and Gold Coast, I know there were a lot of people that were in a tizzy about Mac Andrews. And first, Riley Thilthorpe, does he share the weights in the Adelaide weight room, or does he lift all of them himself? I mean, that young man is, I think the term I used in when I was outside today trying to record this earlier, he's yoked. He is massive, an absolutely massive specimen of a young forward. But there was that controversial attempt to go after the ball right along the boundary where Mac Andrews kind of came across Dilthorpe, and it looked like his leg kind of dragged across his head. I didn't see anything malicious there. Could he have maybe avoided him? Possibly. But after the game, from what I've been reading, Mac Andrews chose not to win with grace. That he decided to talk some smack to Riley Tilthorpe, and I hate seeing that kind of thing. Here in the U.S. we had a gentleman by the name of Jim Brown who was an NFL running back back in the late 50s, early 1960s, was a phenomenal player. Um, and he's attributed with the line, when you score a touchdown, that you hand the ball to your referee instead of spiking the football and showing off. He used to say, pretend that you've been there before and that you plan on coming back again really soon. Okay, so Dilthorpe had a phenomenal game. He had 16 disposals. He had 5 goals. He had 2 behinds. He had 4 clearances on his own as well. This young man is playing phenomenal footy, and Adelaide's forward structure scares me as a Cat supporter, knowing that we're playing them this week without Jack Henry. But what Mac Andrews did at the end of the game to get in his face and to talk shit to him about the game to me was classless. Okay, your club just went out there and competed. You worked your tail off. You, and I'm air quoting here if you're listening on audio only, you won the game. Did you win it? The umpires decided you won it, but you're coming out of there with the 4 points. Be gracious when you win. Be gracious. Because that's the thing. Yeah, that's the funny thing is that you see these players, they'll push each other, they'll shove each other, but then after the games, for the most part, they're shaking hands, giving one another hugs, that sort of thing for their opponents. But Mac Andrews seemed to miss that memo about treating your opponent with respect and acting with humility yourself. So it was really disappointing to see that out of him. And I don't like seeing that sort of thing. And I hope that he, gets past that sort of thing and does not do that again. Um, Now, I wanted to talk about a couple of other games in particular. One of them being, that bolter that I had going up the ladder this year that I had tipped North Melbourne to play finals this year to get it in at number 8. Um, Maybe I was a little overzealous with that, because they've now had 2 games in a row where they've lost by an average of 50 points plus. Um, and they've lost it. They've lost to a couple decent sides. But I wonder, I don't think they're going to regress necessarily. I think Sydney played a phenomenal game. They put a lot of pressure on them. I mean, Sydney, and I had taken some notes when I went out there today. They had 50% more inside 50s, 27 scoring shots to 12. And, when they got inside 50, they were very efficient. They kicked a goal basically one out of every three times they got inside 50. And that's a pretty decent stat right there. If you do that, you're going to be successful. And they beat an up and coming side. Now, I did see something on the roar.com.au that was basically challenging Caleb Daniel, that he'd kind of become a bit of an accumulator when it came to disposals and that sort of thing during the games, where he's averaging, I think, 27 disposals a game. They were questioning his kick-ins and his decision making with regards to that, because he'd had 24 kick-ins so far this season, and four of those, so 16, almost 17% of those led directly. His kick-in led to an opponent's goal. So basically, he kicked the ball to the other team. Um, that's not sustainable. I mean, they may have to find somebody else to do kick-ins if he's going to be that reckless with the football. So there's still a lot of things to like about what's happening with North Melbourne, but they're going to have their hiccups. They're going to have their growing pains. Maybe I should have tempered my expectations a little bit and not put them in the eight this year. But again, trying to generate conversation. Okay. I'm trying to trying to put it out there that here's what I think could possibly happen. And I'm not saying that I'm right. Um, but I do think this is a club that is up and coming, and I think we're seeing, whether they make it this year or not still remains to be seen. But I believe that we are within a year or two from having Adelaide, having Gold Coast, having North Melbourne competing for a top four spot. Okay, I mean, I think Gold Coast may get it this year. Who knows? I mean, and you know what? I know that if you're one of the supporters of one of the other 17 clubs, you would hate to see it initially. But deep down, if you said to yourself, wouldn't it be awesome? And you answer this question, yes. Wouldn't it be awesome that if Gold Coast actually made it to a grand final the first time they ever played finals? And again, we're putting the cart way the hell in front of the horse here. Okay, I'm not anointing them with a spot in the finals right now. Um, but the way they're playing, I think it's certainly something that's attainable. Okay, and I have to also then tip my cap to Ross Lyon and the Saints, who just are playing very good football. They're looking, they're sitting at what, 3-1 on the ladder right now. They're sitting number seven on the ladder, and we've got seven clubs that have at least three wins at this point in time through four rounds. You've still got Hawthorn and Brisbane, who are undefeated at 4-0. Gold Coast is undefeated at 3-1. Um, and we've got Carlton, Melbourne, and West Coast sitting at the bottom, with really lousy percentages. Although Carlton has a decent percentage, they still haven't managed to win a game as of yet, which means they played some fairly close games. But with the amount of talent that Carlton has, I just can't see how they continue to play as poorly as they are. And I wonder, how long does Michael Voss keep his job? Is this a club that is ready for implosion? You know, and I know Collingwood beat them, but the Magpies are an interesting story as well, because they've got so many. I mean, they've basically gone all in. They've pushed their chips in on the table to say we're making one more run at a grand final this year, because I think that the Collingwood best 23 next year has at least three or four, five different names in it next year. with the advanced age that they have on their list, I got a feeling there's going to be three or four of those players that are not there next year. Okay. Now, of course, Scott Pendlebury is probably going to try to pull a Tom Brady and play till he's damn near 50, but I don't know how that's going to work out for him. So, we've got an interesting slate of games coming up with the gather round. The got another great matchup, I think. Gold Coast and North Melbourne. This is gonna be an opportunity for North Melbourne to show that what, maybe we're not as bad as we've shown um, in the last couple of weeks. And if Gold Coast is as good as we're starting to think they are, that they should come out and take care of business. And they're playing at the Barossa in Barossa. This is a ground that my mate Mick Aussie did a tour of while he was home in South Australia a few weeks ago, and put it up on his website, mickaussie.com.tv, I think /AFL, I believe. But I'll have a link to that in the show notes for you there if you want to check that out. Especially if you're on video, there'll be a link at the end of the video for sure. But was a decent round. Again, I mentioned the other day I was pleased with the way my Cats played. Kind of bummed out about Jack Henry's injury, but it is what it is. They found themselves back in the 8 right now, and again, it's early. It's fine. They were 10th, whatever. They'll probably be in the 8 when they're all said and done. But raise your hand if you thought Carlton was going to be winless at this point in time of the season. They're going to be 0-4. That between them and Melbourne, neither one of them would have a single point on the ladder. I didn't think that. I mean, I was not convinced that Melbourne was going to be very good this year, but I didn't think Carlton was going to be this bad. So there's my take on what's transpired at the end of round 4. We'll be back probably tomorrow with my tips for round 5, since they start up on Thursday with Adelaide hosting the Crows. Adelaide hosting the Crows. Adelaide hosting the Cats. Let's try that again. Adelaide hosting Geelong at the Adelaide Oval, and that's going to be a fun matchup. Um, you got two clubs that have put a lot of percentage on the board, and I'm looking forward to it. It's a 5:40 start now that the times have changed, which is a little frustrating because before the time change, if I get up early enough, I can watch the entire game before the school day starts. But now I'll have to wait until the end of the school day to watch the last quarter of the game, and I'll have to stay away from social media to see whether or not, Club X or Club Y has won a game. And of course, the first game out is my club playing. But folks, I do hope you'll head over to my website, ayankonthefooty.com, that you'll sign up for the mailing list so that when new episodes come out, you'll have them. If you know somebody who'd be a great guest for the show, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me there. Send me an email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. Hit me up over on X at yank_on. Also, if you're on YouTube, well, first of all, you get to look at this really handsome face. And yeah, I know I need to shave. I'm getting a little scruffy here. Um, for those of you only on audio, it's not a handsome face. Okay. You may want to stick with audio. But if you're on video, if video is your thing, I do hope you hit the subscribe button. I'm about 260 subscribers, not 260,000, 260. So I need 240 more to start making bank on YouTube, because I guess you have to have 500 subscribers in order to actually see any kind of remuneration in terms of the ads that show up on YouTube. So I ought to be able to retire as soon as that happens. I know I'm kidding, but yeah, if you want to subscribe and hit that notification button so when new episodes come out, that would be absolutely awesome. I hope you'll share the podcast with your friends and family. Tell your friends about it. Leave a review over on Apple Podcast, or you can even do that over on my website. Be a huge help. Also in the show notes, there's a link to the survey that I have up about the show. What do you like? What do you not like? What would you like to hear more about? What could I do better? What do you think I do a decent job at? I'd love to hear from you. I've had about 10 of those that have been filled out so far. Would love to have as many more as I possibly could. I'll keep that open for a few more weeks, but I appreciate every single one of you for, taking time to check out what I'm doing here. It truly does mean the world to me. Um, it's this is a labor of love on my part, and all of you who have said kind words, I can't thank you enough. Okay. I really, really enjoy your game. And I've said it many times. I appreciate the fact that you've shared your game with me and with other Americans who love it as well. And ladies and gentlemen, until next time, as always, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. Cheers.